Today's topic will be about encrypting the mempool, right? About EIP 8105 proposal aimed to make Ethereum transactions more private before they are finalized, with the goal of reducing front running and improving fairness in all the networks. So the speakers today, we are joined by two guests from Shutter Network, Luis Bezzenberger and Lauren Harkness, who are here to just share their work and insights on the topic. Well, thank you for both of you for being here, and we're just looking forward to hearing your thoughts on the mempool encryption, EIP 8105, where this fits into Ethereum's future, and why it matters for users, builders, and the broader ecosystem. So we're looking forward for your presentation. Thank you.
The company is called Brainbot, which is sort of the core developer behind Shutter. Brainbot's been active in the Ethereum space since 2014. And since a couple of years, we're building Shutter Network, which is a threshold encryption as a service mechanism. Now also venturing into, let's say, homomorphic encryption as well on the voting side. We're primarily serving these two use cases: the encrypted mempool, where we want to make the case that Ethereum L1 should have an encrypted mempool for front-running resistance and real-time censorship protection. And also then on the side, I just briefly mentioned it, for private voting, the same kind of decentralized threshold encryption mechanism we are also applying for voting, and it's live inside of Snapshot. And again, we're moving sort of to homomorphic encryption for threshold homomorphic permanently private voting. And the way we wanted to set this up, or the idea was that we start with a very brief, just intro us two, start with a very brief presentation, sort of like 5 minutes, and then we will kind of open the floor and open a little bit of a more generalized discussion.
Hey everyone, I'm Lauren, head of commercial at Brainbot, the same organization as Louis. I wish we could be there in person with you all. Unfortunately, we can't, maybe in the future. And normally at this point, I would wish everyone a hearty GM. But I'm actually going to break from the presentation because I got to tell you what happened to me just now. The craziest thing happened, and I just got to get it off my chest. So, it's like, 5:30 here in Germany. And, I've been feeling a little low energy today. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go get a cup of coffee before the presentation starts. And there's this new place which opened up in my neighborhood. It's called the Coffee Market. Louis, I don't know. Have you been there? Okay, so this place,
great place.
Yeah, the Coffee Market is this crazy place where there's no fixed price for coffee. The prices actually fluctuate based on the time of day and based on consumer demand. And, I went in kind of in the middle of the afternoon thinking I could get a cheap cup of coffee, just to give me a perk before we got on stage here. And, it's one of these new fancy cafes where like you scan the QR code in order to order. And I scanned the QR code and I ordered my normal Americano, and it was like, hey, the price is $5. And I was like, cool, okay, submit order. And then this window popped up on my phone, and it was like, hey, like we all know the price is $5, right? Price is $5. But what's the maximum you'd be willing to pay for that cup of coffee? And I was like, what's the maximum I'd be willing to pay? I don't know. I mean, this presentation is kind of important and like I'm feeling low energy. So maybe I'd be willing to pay like $50 for a cup of coffee? And, I didn't really think anything of it. And then I went to tap my credit card in order to make payment. And in the split second before my card hit the payment terminal, the price of coffee skyrocketed to $50. And when I touched my card, I ended up paying $50 for that cup of coffee. And like, I didn't know what was going on. And, after I had gotten my cup of coffee and settled down, when I spoke to the manager, and the manager was like, hey, look, you said that you'd be willing to pay $50 for a cup of coffee, even though the price is $5. And so what someone started doing probably is they started buying up all the coffee in the store and in this town, driving the price up from $5 all the way up to $50. And so when you actually paid like the maximum amount that you'd be willing to pay. And then that person, after you paid, probably started selling coffee back into the market. And now the price is $5 again. And I was like, this is crazy. Like who would buy a cup of coffee thinking that they're going to pay $5 and end up paying $50, right? Just because someone can see that order and manipulate it. And I was like, I'm never going back to this coffee shop again. Like, the coffee market is dead to me. I am so pissed off, and I just needed to share all of this with you guys because it is unreal. Now,
Crazy place.
Yeah. Obviously, you guys are sitting there thinking, like, what? This is a crazy story. This is kind of stupid. Like, who would pay $50 for a cup of coffee? Who would manipulate a coffee market? And it's actually kind of a silly story, but it does kind of give an insight into just how crazy malicious MEV on Ethereum has become. Because that exact scenario where someone is making a purchase and a sophisticated actor can see that purchase order and then place their transaction before that order and then after order, thus manipulating the price and giving the user the worst price and extracting value from that transaction reordering attack. That's actually exactly what malicious MEV is. And it's one of the problems which has plagued Ethereum for the past 4 or 5 years. And estimates range, but one solid estimate we often refer to is that $1.8 billion has been extracted, or some might even say stolen, from everyday normal Ethereum users, people like me and you. And so what we're going to be doing in this call with you guys today is we're going to be talking about some of the efforts in order to prevent malicious MEV on Ethereum mainnet. And it's actually a super hot topic right now. There has been a flurry of proposals, EIPs, with different ways to introduce encrypted mempools, one solution for preventing malicious MEV. I'm going to hand it back over to Luis, and he's going to take you through some of the current conversation, and then we'll kind of have a fireside chat and hopefully field some questions from you all in the audience. But again, thank you for having us here today.
I think it's a great intro, and I think should make it a little more tangible of what the core problem is. And the way I started was, or I want to start this presentation is, even just in general, not even just crypto, just in general, what would you expect from your kind of like your marketplace, right, or your financial ordering machine to do, right? And obviously, people, maybe banks or certain kind of more professional actors would maybe put forward this efficiency argument, or you want to have very, very low latency trading or things like this. I don't think normal people care that much, right? I think they're more interested in just fairness and kind of like you need to be sure that you're not being put at a disadvantage when you enter this market, right? It's like crypto and traditional finance. When you trade, be that in your broker app with the bank, or be that in crypto with I don't know, Solana or Ethereum or Coinbase, whatever, your primary concern is, am I not getting exploited, or is it going to be a fair environment that I'm trading in here? So neutrality, credibility, fairness, I think is kind of like paramount. And both in TradFi and crypto is basically kind of to a certain degree fundamentally broke. I mean, it works, but it also doesn't work that well. So I would say in traditional finance, it's interesting front running, which is basically what Lauren just laid out. Basically, is the ability to see transactions early, see your transaction early, and sort of jump the queue and steal your trade, right? So front running. So that happens in the real world as well, or happened in the past. Just kind of was, so in general, made illegal, or at least the bulk of it. There's still ways that people get front run in the real world. It's quite interesting. Julian Ma from the ETH has a cool viewpoint on this. But essentially, front running is made illegal. But you have all these other problems that are also, and it is, I think, there's a lot of time and money spent to ban it and to make it sort of like, and to enforce trust and to enforce this regulation, right? But you also have all these other sort of related issues with transaction ordering and with kind of like, where does your transaction hit the exchange? For example, kind of similar to crypto, you have these dark pools. In crypto, you have private mempools. In the real world, you have these alternative venues for where trading happens. Another word for it is MTFs, multilateral trading facilities. The dark pools and MTFs, similarly in a way also to crypto, they fragment liquidity, and certain people want to be able to trade kind of on their own there and be like have better prices there than kind of the public markets. So that's also another issue. Then you have this payment for order flow topic. So basically, that's kind of the primary income for these new brokers, right? Like Robinhood in the US and Germany have something called Trade Republic, very similar, like when you can trade your stocks on your app, right? What happens is your order flow gets sold to these market makers, because that's like interesting order flow, right? People are seeing, there might be something to capitalize on your order flow, right? And so your neo broker sells this order flow to these market makers, and thus they can offer you these extremely low, or even sometimes like free trading fees, because they monetize your trades, right? So that's kind of another issue. And general latency and arbitrage just creates inefficiencies. And in crypto, we have this thing. There's no kind of like legal or illegal. It's still like a little bit of a Wild West, I would say. Although that's sort of potentially also being discussed to make it illegal. But you have this front running issue, somewhat addressed by these kind of private mempools, but that just means you're taking this sort of alternative route through a trusted trusted transaction supply chain intermediary that kind of guarantees you, based on his trust, that they won't front run you, which is kind of like band-aid on the problem. So yes, that's sort of like good for the immediate problem, but then now it creates this trust issue. Right now you have to trust these people or institutions to not front run you, and that's kind of like, that's the whole point of blockchain. You do not want to trust those intermediaries. So not optimal, and also again fragmentation there as well creates all these different places where transactions are flowing through. Not optimal for kind of like liquidity and kind of like centralized and sort of like a good marketplace. Also, we have this builder oligopoly. So we have kind of like, with PBS, we're separating between proposers and builders on the protocol level, and PBS was introduced to reduce the proposer monopoly, to reduce kind of the centralization there. But now, kind of the issue is as well, we have on the builders who are actually creating the block, right? you only have two builders that are dominating like 95% of all blocks. So that's another just centralization issue, and also a censorship issue. Though I think both of these are situated in the US, where in the past you had these talks around censorship and OFAC list. So very, very likely that they will be regulated in the future and not to include certain transactions based on this sanction lists and OFAC lists. So again, that's like, it's not a good situation if you have only two major builders kind of being the gateway and the gatekeeper to the mempool, right? And we talked about this MEV extraction and kind of like just a lot of exploited value, right? So enter kind of encrypted mempools. The idea is, instead of sending a transaction either to the public mempool where it's transparent and you're just getting exploited, or sending it to a trusted single party where you just have to trust them that they won't front run you. Instead, it is sort of like encrypted in either you yourself encrypt, or there is a decentralized way to encrypt, and then you send it into the mempool encrypted, and the block producer, they have to commit on the inclusion and order of the transactions while they're still encrypted. So even kind of the validator, builder, proposer, even they can't see what's in the transactions. They have to commit blind to the inclusion of transactions, right? And only afterwards do they, only after this order is like fixed in place, only after this, there is this decryption step, again, either by you yourself or by this kind of this decentralized encryption mechanism. Only after that's released, and then it's executed. And that just ensures, well, even the validator, builder, proposer themselves can't see what's in transactions. Very hard to front run if you don't see what's in them, right? And very hard to censor as well. So that's kind of just like the ELI5. And then we kind of like have the opinion that a threshold encryption is probably the best encryption decryption mechanism, because that's this decentralized way of encrypting decrypting. But there's also other encryption methods, just as encrypting yourself, or for example TEs, which is a hardware type of encryption decryption mechanism. And why we think this matters is kind of like primarily it's actually less about front running, because again, we have kind of like quick fixed front running with these private mempools. So, well, people have different opinions on why it's important, but to me, maybe like censorship resistance is sort of like maybe the important one, right? If you encrypt transactions, it's extremely hard to censor them, because you don't even know what's in the transaction, right? So I think that's a major one. And again, this like reducing centralized trust assumptions in the mempool. A really big one to me is if we create this more fair marketplace and this more accessible marketplace where people don't get front run left and right, or where you don't have these like white glove specialized mempools and fragmented liquidity lanes where only certain people have access to, I think we can get more people to the table, right? We can, if we level the playing field, basically, we can just get more people to be interested in and be and add just more traders and more people, which means more liquidity. And to me, that means ultimately more transactions, better prices, everything, right? So I think that's key to, I think to me, it's, if you build a really good marketplace, a trustworthy marketplace, it just means you attract more liquidity, right? Also, I think applies to institutions, because as we've seen, like in traditional finance, it's actually just like made illegal. And just from a compliance perspective, sometimes, or regulatory perspective, traditional finance institutions might not even, they certainly they won't feel comfortable trading on a marketplace where front running is possible, right? So I think it's like, that's an argument for making it impossible as well. And then we talked about this builder and private mempool oligopoly. I think that's something where the encrypted mempool can level the playing field, and even for the builders can actually empower smaller builders to now be actually have more chance. Because right now you're trusting these large builders not to front run you. The more you take that trust assumption away and say like it's part of the protocol that there's no front running, the more we think you empower smaller builders again to be able to compete with the large builders, because trust is something that smaller, newer builders maybe haven't accumulated yet, right? And then quite quickly, what's the current status of this, right? So we proposed something that's called EIP 8105, which is this protocol level encrypted mempool, encryption technology and agnostic. It's not even specific to threshold encryption. Any encryption can be used. And right afterwards, some small kind of team, kind of primarily from the EF, has proposed their own approach to this called Lucid. Very similar approach, and that's why we said we should join forces, because it's kind of the goal side is very similar, and also on the approach is pretty similar. So we joined forces to bring this to Ethereum. It was then not included. It's pretty likely that it won't be included in the Hegota hard fork, but there is actually a good chance for it to be included the next fork, the iStar hard fork, because it was just listed on the EF Strawman roadmap for iStar in 2027. And in general, there is a lot of feedback that came from this client process from the client teams and this voting process, which I think should now lead to us and Lucid team and others iterating on the design and just making it a lot better. So a couple of examples here. There is very good criticism from Flashbots coming that that backrunning is less efficient in this design. So maybe first and foremost, just briefly, the encrypted mempool only prevents front running, not all MEV. It can by definition only prevent front running, and back running is still able to. There's still ways to exploit to extract back running MEV, which is actually something that people think is good, because that's for liquidations and arbitrage, and can actually, if you then pay that back to the user, that's actually kind of considered sort of like benign / good MEV. Totally possible in both Lucid and EIP 8105. Just the exact way how to extract it is arguably less efficient, and you can extract maybe a little bit less of it as compared to a private mempool. So I think there are strong approaches to bringing that backrunning efficiency to the same level as for private mempools, which I think one of them is post-inclusion ordering, maybe some other ideas. And by the way, just all in all, I don't think it matters even that much, because it certainly is better than it would be in the public mempool. So if you compare against private mempools, there might be some efficiency losses, but if you compare against a public mempool, that's certainly kind of like better. The situation should be better for the user because they're not getting front running. There's talks about potentially combining it with frame transactions, which is like kind of like this UX account abstraction type EIP. And then I think there is definitely a push for it. It should be ideally as post-quantum resistant as possible. There's a strong push from the Ethereum Foundation to make everything. Every addition to the protocol should be every cryptography addition to the protocol should be post-quantum resistant, which it is. Both the EIP 8105 and Lucid are, because they're encryption technology agnostic. It's just you need to make sure that there is actually sensible and good encryption technologies that fulfill that criteria. And then while kind of that's being figured out, and we're kind of working on I would say the next generation of this EIP, we are also just building out of protocol. So one thing that's been live actually for a longer time now is an out of protocol version of the encrypted mempool on Gnosis chain. And that's actually supported by the Nethermind and Aragon clients. So recommend everyone to check that out. But for Ethereum L1, we're also bringing that to Ethereum L1 via together with PrimeF, which have this builder and proposer commitment scheme called MEV commit. And we have built this together with the PrimeF team, have built this encrypted mempool lane basically into that. And that's really ready for builders to adopt. So if you know any builders, or if you are working at a builder, talk to us. We would love to have you guys be part of that and support it, so that we can have an out of protocol version of the encrypted mempool before it gets fully implemented deeply into the protocol. That's kind of it. And just showing the EF strawman roadmap, where you can see the encrypted mempool here is scheduled for iStar 2027. 2027, yeah, and along with other things. And here, very brief sneak peek on this the swap demo app in AMM for this Shutter PrimeF or encrypted mempool X MEV commit out of protocol implementation. Yeah, that's it. And we think, by making the mempool by bringing back the public, so maybe that's something I forgot to say. The public mempool is broken, everyone agrees. So that's why people are choosing these private mempools. And I think the encrypted mempool is a way to bring back the public mempool and level the playing field. And by doing so, I think we're doing good and making Ethereum more attractive to everyone.
Cool. There's an important concept which we kind of just gave the most surface explanation of, which is really at the core of Shutter, and that is commit and reveal threshold encryption. And for everyone listening, it's probably good for us to dive into that in a little bit more detail, because it underpins everything that Shutter does, from malicious MEV prevention with encrypted mempools to private voting and other applications. So to break that down for you, there's commit and reveal threshold encryption. When we talk about commit and reveal, this is a special type of encryption which is really important, not in the sense of making something private and hiding it away forever and always from everyone. This is a type of encryption which is particularly applicable in simultaneous move situations, where it would, if one player were to see the other player's move before making their own move and use that information asymmetry to their advantage, then they could potentially win every time, or exploit or manipulate the game for their desired outcome. A really good example of this is rock, paper, scissors. That's a classic simultaneous move situation where you have to show rock, paper, or scissors, and the other person has to do the same. And it works really well when you're in person, because we trust each other, and our reflexes aren't fast enough to see the other person's move before making our move. But just imagine that we played a lopsided game of rock, paper, scissors, where we counted to 3, you had to show your move, and then we counted 4, 5, 6, and I got to show my move. Then it would be completely unfair. It wouldn't be a simultaneous move situation anymore. So the way that we can make this simultaneous move situation more fair and neutral is by essentially encrypting the moves when people commit to them. So you can imagine a kind of partition between me and my opponent. I show 1, 2, 3, and then I lock in that move, and then the other player locks in his or her move, and once both moves are locked in, then the partition is removed and the results are revealed. That's kind of the essence behind commit and reveal encryption. And if you think about it, private voting is another wonderful example. Not even thinking about DAOs or blockchain-based voting, but if you think about like putting your ballot in an envelope and then in a locked ballot box. That's actually kind of a manual form of commit and reveal encryption, which keeps all ballots secret until the end of the voting period. And then the second part of that is threshold encryption. So going back to, so threshold encryption is basically, instead of relying on a trusted third party in order to provide the encryption and decryption service, you rely on a distributed group of nodes which collaborates to generate encryption and decryption keys. And this is a very decentralized and robust way of doing encryption. It does start off with an honest majority assumption or an honest threshold assumption. But there are layers of security that you can put in place in order to kind of provide a backstop to that honest threshold assumption. One of those is you can do staking and slashing, so that if any of the nodes is acting dishonestly, they'll have an economic penalty. And then there are some cutting-edge cryptographic techniques, including cryptographic snitching, where if one node does try to collude maliciously with other nodes, then the other nodes can actually see that malicious behavior, generate a cryptographic proof of the bad behavior, and then use that to both penalize the malicious node and to get a bounty or a reward themselves. And this is really, at the heart of everything that Shutter does. Thank you so much for having us. Just as kind of a mandatory shameless plug, if you are interested in learning more about Shutter and our work, please go to Shutter, SHUTTER.network, and you can find all the information there. If you're interested in encrypted mempools, just do a quick search for EIP 8105 or Lucid, LUCID encrypted mempools. And of course, this isn't something, excuse me, this isn't something that we can implement alone. And so if you are a wallet, a protocol developer, a block builder, if you even just a user on Ethereum, please think about how you can contribute to implementing encrypted mempools, whether it's on a technical level or merely just hopping on X and saying that you're bullish on encrypted mempools for censorship resistance and preventing toxic MEV.
I'm bullish on it. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.